My name is Ethan Cole, and until a year ago, I was the invisible sibling. Not because I was shy or strange, but because my sister, Claire, had a way of filling every room with her presence until no one else seemed to exist. Growing up, she was the golden child, top grades, varsity cheerleader, always surrounded by people who adored her. I was quieter, more analytical, a computer guy who preferred building things to socializing. My parents called her our shining star and me the responsible one. I never complained, but over time, that kind of dynamic drains you. You start to wonder if your absence would even register in the world you inhabit. Everything changed last December. I'd been working remotely in cybersecurity, paying rent for an apartment I barely lived in, and helping my parents financially when I could. Claire had just gone through a breakup and moved back in with them. She immediately turned every dinner into a stage, crying, laughing, complaining about her ex while criticizing my life choices in the same breath. I tuned her out until one night she said something that stuck like a thorn I couldn't pull out. It was a cold Sunday, and I'd just come back from I'd fainted at work 2 days earlier, and the doctors were running tests for what they thought might be an autoimmune issue. I wasn't overly worried, but it shook me up enough that I mentioned it at dinner. Claire laughed between bites of lasagna and said, "Maybe dying will finally make you interesting." Everyone froze. My mom gasped, my dad muttered something about not appropriate, but Claire smirked like she hadn't said anything wrong. I remember staring at her across the table, my fork halfway to my mouth, and realizing that my entire family, this house, this town had turned into something unrecognizable. That night, I lay awake until 3 a.m., thinking about what it meant to disappear. Not die, but truly disappear from the lives of those who made you feel small. The idea started as a flicker, then grew into a full-blown plan. What if I just left? What if I stopped being the safety net everyone leaned on but never noticed? The thought scared me, but it also felt intoxicating. Over the next week, I started preparing. I paid off what I could, transferred my savings to a separate account, and called my landlord to end the lease. I had an old 2012 Subaru that ran perfectly, and it became my escape pod. I went through my apartment, selecting only what I needed: clothes, tools, laptop, a few sentimental items. I found my passport and old credit cards, then had a wild idea. What if I left them behind? Cancelled everything tied to this identity and started fresh. When my test results came back, the doctor said it wasn't life-threatening, just chronic fatigue likely from stress. I almost laughed. Stress, of course. I thanked him and walked out with a strange calm. That night, I sat down at my computer, closed all my accounts, and canceled every credit card. I left my phone charging on the table, logged out of every social platform, and bought a prepaid burner in cash. The morning I left, I didn't tell anyone. I just packed the car, left my keys in the mailbox, and drove off before sunrise. My parents would assume I went back to the city for work. Claire would roll her eyes and say I was being dramatic. I didn't care. I was free. I drove aimlessly for 2 days, staying in cheap motels, eating diner food, trying to feel the thrill of escape, but instead, I felt an eerie sense of peace. No one was calling, no one asking for help. For the first time in years, silence didn't feel empty, it felt deserved. By the third day, I found myself in a small coastal town in Oregon called Seabrook. It was quiet, mostly retirees and fishermen. I stopped at a coffee shop with a help wanted sign and struck up a conversation with the owner, a woman named Maggie. She hired me part-time to manage their website and fix their Wi-Fi setup. I rented a small cabin behind the main road for cash, using a fake name, Eli Turner. I told Maggie I was traveling for a while, figuring things out. She didn't pry. That was what I loved about small towns. They cared, but not enough to suffocate you. Within weeks, I'd fallen into a rhythm. Work, coffee, walks by the beach. For the first time, I didn't feel invisible, I just existed. But peace has a funny way of attracting ghosts. 2 months into my new life, someone sent a letter to the cafe. It had no return address, just my real name, Ethan Cole, scrawled across the envelope. My stomach dropped. No one here knew that name. I took it outside, hands trembling, and opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 7 words, written in Claire's perfect cursive. You think you can just disappear. My heart started pounding. No phone, no email, no social media. I hadn't told a soul. How did she find me? I crumpled the letter and threw it into the ocean, but that night, I couldn't sleep. Every car passing by made me tense. Every sound outside the cabin made me wonder if she was nearby. A few days later, I came back from work to find a small box on my doorstep. Inside was an old photo of us as kids and a note. It said, "You owe me a conversation." That was the moment I realized Claire wasn't just angry. She was hunting me. I didn't open the door that night. I just sat on the couch staring at that box until the clock hit midnight. The photo inside showed us at the county fair, cotton candy in hand, her smile wide and perfect, mine small and uncertain. I hadn't seen that picture in years. It used to hang in my parents' hallway, which meant Claire had been there recently. Or worse, she'd been through my things. The idea that she might have gone to my empty apartment, found clues, traced something God, it made my stomach twist. Over the next few days, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she hired someone, maybe she got my last GPS location before I ditched the phone. Still, how could she have found the exact town? My name wasn't on anything. The cabin rental was under Eli Turner. I paid in cash. I didn't even use my real birth date. It didn't make sense. Maggie noticed something was off. "You look like you saw a ghost," she said one morning, sliding a mug of coffee across the counter. I forced a smile and said I just hadn't been sleeping. She told me to take a few days off, said I'd earned it. I almost laughed. Here I was, hiding from my own sister, and people thought I was just tired. That evening, I walked to the beach. The air smelled of salt and rain, and the waves came in lazy, like the world had slowed down. I kept telling myself I'd imagined the handwriting, that maybe someone was messing with me. But deep down, I knew. Claire had always been sharp. She could track anything if she wanted to. She had this relentless energy when she decided something was hers. She never let go. That used to be charming when she wanted attention, but now it felt dangerous. A week passed with no new letters. I started to relax again, thinking maybe she'd given up. Then, one night, I came home to find my cabin door slightly open. Just a crack, but enough to make my chest seize. I froze on the porch, listening. Silence. Slowly, I pushed the door open. The living room looked untouched. My laptop was still on the table. My jacket hung where I left it. But on the bed sat a single envelope. Inside was another note. "You shouldn't have left me to clean up your mess." I didn't know what that meant. What mess? I hadn't done anything. Unless she was talking about our parents, maybe they were worried sick. Guilt crept in then, heavy and hot. I'd ghosted everyone without warning. My mom probably cried for weeks. My dad must have filed a missing person report. But Claire's tone wasn't about worrying. It was accusation. I didn't sleep that night either. Instead, I sat with the envelope under the lamp, replaying our childhood. Claire had always manipulated situations to her advantage. When she broke our mom's favorite vase, she'd cried and said I scared her, and I'd taken the blame. When she totaled her first car, she told our parents I'd borrowed it without permission. I didn't even drive then. Every time, I let it go because I didn't want to fight. But now, this felt like history repeating on a much bigger stage. The next morning, I packed a bag and drove to a neighboring town called Grayson's Point, 30 miles inland, surrounded by forest. I rented a cheap room above a mechanic's shop, paid in cash again. I didn't tell Maggie I was leaving. I just sent a note saying thank you for everything. For a few days, it worked. No letters, no strange boxes. I started working freelance online again under a VPN. I even started jogging in the mornings to shake the anxiety. Life almost felt normal until I went to the grocery store one afternoon and saw her. Claire. She was standing by the produce section, her blonde hair pulled into a ponytail, wearing sunglasses even though it was cloudy. She turned, and for a split second, our eyes met. My heart stopped. I ducked behind a shelf, breathing hard, pretending to check cereal boxes. When I looked again, she was gone. I rushed outside. Nothing. Just a parking lot full of strangers. I wanted to believe I'd imagined it, but the smell of her perfume lingered in the air, unmistakable. That night, I packed again. This time, I didn't even wait till morning. I drove until the fuel light came on and ended up in a rundown motel 2 states away. I changed my name again. Now I was Ethan Rowe. The irony didn't escape me. I'd become the kind of person I used to track down for a living. I thought about going to the police, but what would I say? My sister might be stalking me because I left home. They'd tell me to block her number. I didn't even have one. Besides, there was no proof she'd done anything illegal. No threats, just notes that could be interpreted as concern if you ignored the undertone of menace. 3 weeks passed. I started to relax again. The weather turned colder, and I spent most evenings reading in my room, letting the radio fill the silence. I even started journaling, something I hadn't done since college. Writing helped me see the absurdity of it all, the idea that I'd let one cruel sentence at a dinner table push me this far. but every time I thought of going back, I'd remember her laugh, that dismissive smirk, and I'd stay put. Then came the phone call. The motel clerk knocked on my door one morning holding the landline receiver. "Call for you," he said. I frowned. I hadn't given this number to anyone. I hesitated, then took it. "Hello." Silence for a few seconds. Then a familiar voice, calm and sharp. "You really think you can run forever, Ethan?" I froze. "Claire." She laughed, a low, measured sound. "You left me with everything. The questions, the guilt, the parents crying every night. You think this is freedom? You think you're punishing us? You're just proving what I always knew: you were never built to stay." Before I could respond, she hung up. I stood there, the receiver heavy in my hand, heart pounding so hard it hurt. I asked the clerk who had called, but he shrugged, said it came from a blocked number. That was when I knew I couldn't just keep running. She'd find me anywhere. Somehow, she had eyes everywhere I went. Maybe she had someone helping her. Maybe she was smarter than I'd ever realized. I needed to understand why she was doing this, what she wanted. So I made a decision that felt both insane and inevitable. I was going to confront her, but not by going home. I'd make her come to me on my terms. I spent the next week preparing. I reopened one of my old email accounts from a public library, knowing she'd be watching for it. Then I sent a single message: "Claire, meet me where it all started." Alone. No signature, no details. Just that. The place I meant was obvious, at least to her. Our childhood cabin, deep in the woods outside Ashwood Lake. Our parents had sold it years ago. But I knew how to get in. If she wanted closure or revenge, she'd come. I just didn't realize until it was too late that she wasn't the only one who'd been tracking someone. The drive to Ashwood Lake took 12 hours. I barely stopped except for gas and bad coffee. By the time I reached the dirt road leading into the forest, dusk had swallowed the sky. The cabin wasn't visible from the main road anymore. The trees had grown wild, reclaiming the path like they wanted to keep people out. I parked half a mile away and walked the rest of the way on foot, my flashlight cutting thin slices through the darkness. When I finally saw it, the cabin looked smaller than I remembered: weathered wood, boarded windows, roof sagging slightly. The front steps creaked as I climbed them, a sound that pulled up memories I'd buried years ago. The summer we built a fort out back. The time Claire pushed me into the lake because I told her ghosts weren't real. It felt like I was walking into a graveyard of old versions of myself. I forced the door open. Inside smelled of rot and dust. I set my flashlight on the table, checked each room out of habit. Empty. The silence felt heavy, like it was waiting for something. I found an old chair, sat down, and waited. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. I started to wonder if she'd gotten the message or if she'd just decided I wasn't worth the trouble anymore. Then I heard it. Gravel crunching outside. A car door shutting. My heart lurched. The door creaked open. "You always did love dramatics," Claire's voice said from the doorway. She stepped into the light, wearing a black coat, her hair pulled back, her face pale from the cold. She looked older, somehow tired, like she hadn't slept in days. I hadn't planned what to say. I just blurted, "How did you find me again?" She smiled faintly. "You make it too easy, Ethan. You use the same VPN servers, the same writing patterns. You think you're a ghost, but you leave fingerprints everywhere." I swallowed hard. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you don't get to vanish," she said softly, stepping closer. "You left chaos behind. Mom thought you were dead. Dad called every hospital. And me?" She paused, her voice trembling. "I found out things you'd rather I hadn't." "What are you talking about?" She reached into her coat and pulled out an envelope. My name was written on it, my real one. She tossed it onto the table. I hesitated before opening it. Inside were photocopies of financial records, my records from months before I disappeared. Transactions, wire transfers, one in particular for $10,000 to a name I didn't recognize. Marlowe Foundation. I frowned. "This isn't mine." "Oh, it is," she said. "Bank confirmed it. You sent money to a nonprofit that doesn't exist." I traced it. Guess what I found? It's a shell account for a data laundering network. "You're in deep, Ethan. You didn't just run away, you ran from something." My throat went dry. "That's not possible." "I didn't." I stopped. And then it hit me. Before I left, I'd worked a freelance contract for a cybersecurity firm that specialized in data recovery. They'd sent me encrypted files to decrypt, claiming it was a legal investigation. I'd never questioned it, just did my job and got paid. Could they have used my credentials to move money? Frame me? I looked up at Claire. "You don't understand." I didn't know. She cut me off. "Save it. You always act like the victim." Always running from responsibility. Her voice cracked on that last word. For the first time, I saw something other than anger fear. They came to the house, Ethan, she whispered. 2 men in suits. Said they were investigating you. They asked if we'd been in contact. I thought it was a mistake. Then I found your emails, your old drives. I realized you'd vanished right after the transfers. So I started looking. I had to find you before they did. I stared at her, the pieces falling into place. You were trying to warn me, she nodded slowly, tears welling in her eyes. But you made it impossible. You wiped everything, changed your name, disappeared like a criminal. Do you have any idea what that looked like? Silence settled between us. The cabin creaked in the wind. For the first time in years, I saw her not as my cruel sister, but as someone who'd been dragged into a nightmare because of me. I didn't know, I said quietly. I thought I was escaping you. I didn't realize I was running from something real. Claire sighed, pacing. They're not just some random agents, Ethan. Whoever you worked for, they're dangerous. And if they think you still have what they want, they won't stop. What do they want? Whatever was in those encrypted files. My pulse quickened. I remembered the job vaguely: huge datasets, unfamiliar encryption keys, and a note that said urgent, legal evidence retention. I hadn't kept a copy. At least, I didn't think I had. Then my stomach dropped. My old laptop, the one I'd packed when I left. I still had it. Claire must have seen the realization on my face. You still have something, don't you? Before I could answer, headlights swept across the windows. Both of us froze. A car door slammed outside. Then another. Ethan, she whispered, her voice shaking, we need to go. Too late. The front door burst open, and 2 men stepped in. One tall, one heavyset, both wearing dark coats and no badges. The tall one spoke first. Ethan Cole, you have something that belongs to us. Claire moved instinctively between us. He doesn't know anything. The man smiled faintly. Then he won't mind handing it over. I backed up, my hand brushing the laptop bag on the table. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I don't know what you're talking about, I said. Let's not make this difficult, the heavyset man said, taking a step forward. And that's when Claire did something I'll never forget. She grabbed the laptop, turned, and smashed it against the edge of the table. The screen cracked, circuits sparking. You want it? She shouted. It's gone. The tall man lunged toward her, but she threw the broken computer at him and bolted for the back door. I followed instinctively. We burst into the night, sprinting toward the trees as shouts erupted behind us. Branches tore at my arms. The cold bit at my lungs. Claire was ahead, flashlight bouncing wildly as she ran. We didn't stop until we reached the lake, both of us gasping for breath. The cabin was out of sight now, the only sound the wind and the water slapping against the shore. Claire turned to me, eyes wide. We can't go back. They'll keep coming. I nodded, trying to think, adrenaline still roaring in my veins. What do we do? She hesitated. We finish what you started. We find out who they are, and just like that, it wasn't about escaping anymore. It was about survival. The sister who once mocked me, who'd made me feel invisible, had just saved my life. And now, for the first time in my life, I was trusting her completely. But as I'd soon learn, even that trust came with a price I never expected. We didn't go back for the car. It was too risky. We spent that night hiding in an abandoned ranger station a few miles from the lake, using what little warmth came from a half-dead wood stove. Neither of us spoke much. The shock hadn't worn off. Claire sat against the wall, her knees pulled to her chest, her hands shaking. I stared at the broken laptop bag, the destroyed fragments of my old life scattered inside it. At sunrise, I stepped outside to get some air. Mist hung low over the forest, turning everything into a blur of gray and green. My mind raced in loops. Who were those men? Who did I actually work for back then? Why did they think I still had something? When I went back inside, Claire was already awake, scribbling something in a notebook she'd found. We can't stay here, she said flatly. If they traced you this far, they can trace me too. We need to get ahead of them. Where? She flipped the notebook toward me. Inside was a rough timeline: dates, names, small details from my past contracts. The Marlowe Foundation, she said. I dug deeper before I came after you. It's not a charity. It's a front for a private data analytics group called Stratos Global. They've been hiring freelancers through dummy companies to clean sensitive data. Legal cases, corporate leaks, government files, whatever they can't risk handling directly. I frowned. And they used me as a fall guy. Maybe, she said. Or maybe you decrypted something they wanted buried. That made sense in a way that terrified me. I'd been given encrypted archives, told to restore them, and send them back through secure upload channels. I'd never asked what they contained. I didn't want to, but now, I wished I had. We spent the next 2 days laying low in small towns, hitching rides, paying cash for food and burner phones. Claire was resourceful in ways that surprised me. She handled herself like someone used to moving under pressure, calm, sharp, decisive. I saw a side of her that didn't fit the version I'd grown up with. The sister who once cared about appearances now moved like a strategist, using whatever she could find. On the third day, she found something. A name. Arthur Lang, she said, tapping her phone screen. Former cybersecurity director for Stratos Global. Went missing last year after blowing the whistle on internal corruption. But look at this, his last known address was in Portland. 2 hours from here. Do you think he has answers? If anyone does, it's him. We borrowed an old truck from a gas station mechanic who didn't ask questions for a few $100s and drove straight to Portland. The address led us to a half-empty apartment complex on the east side of town. Unit 3B. Claire knocked. No answer. She tried again, louder. I was about to suggest we leave when the door cracked open just an inch. A man's voice rasped. Who sent you? No one, Claire said quickly. We're looking for Arthur Lang. Never heard of him, he said, starting to shut the door. Claire slipped her foot into the gap. We know about Stratos, about the Marlowe Foundation. We just need to talk. Silence. Then the door opened fully. Arthur looked nothing like I expected. He was in his late 40s and shaven, wearing a faded hoodie and dark circles under his eyes. His apartment smelled like burnt coffee and paranoia, newspapers taped over the windows, laptops half disassembled on the table. You shouldn't have come here, he said, locking the door behind us. They watch everything. They already found us, I said. Twice. He studied me for a long moment. You're Ethan Cole. That name from a stranger's mouth made my blood run cold. Arthur motioned us to sit. You were part of the batch 5 months ago, the dataset called Atlas Archive. You don't know what you opened, do you? I shook my head. He sighed. It wasn't corporate data. It was a mirror backup of internal communications between Stratos executives and federal contractors. Whistleblower-level stuff, payments, cover-ups, data manipulation, false evidence uploads, you name it. When you decrypted it, you became part of the chain. They wiped everyone else, one by one. Wiped? Claire asked. He met her eyes. Gone. Missing. Accidents. Suicides. Fires. You think you disappeared, kid? They let you. They were waiting to see who you'd contact. A chill went through me. Then why haven't they just killed me yet? Arthur gave a grim smile. Because they think you still have the decryption key. You didn't just open that archive, you generated a trace log. The system assigns a random offline key every time it's accessed. Yours is the only one that worked without triggering an alert. They can't replicate it without you. I tried to remember that project, every line of code I'd written. It had been a long night, a rush job. I'd used a custom script I'd built years earlier, one that automated certain bypasses. It wasn't supposed to create a key, it just worked. Claire's voice broke through my thoughts. If he doesn't have it, they'll kill him anyway, won't they? Arthur nodded. That's how they work. The room felt smaller by the second. So what do we do? Arthur hesitated, then reached into a desk drawer and pulled out a small flash drive. There's one option. You still have the right to expose them. The only way to end this is to make what you decrypted public. But you need to access a node that's still clean. I've been working on an anonymous upload relay. Once it's out, there's no going back. I stared at the flash drive. And if we don't, then you keep running until they catch you. We didn't have a choice. That night, we drove out of the city to an old industrial park where Arthur said the relay server was hidden. It was almost cinematic, fog rolling through empty warehouses, the hum of distant traffic. He led us into a small building with a single computer terminal surrounded by power cables. This is it, he said. Plug this in, and the file goes. Everywhere encrypted copies, mirrored through the dark web, news channels, watchdog groups. Once it's live, they can't stop it. I hesitated, holding the drive. What's on it? Arthur looked at me, his expression grim. The truth. But you might not like what it costs. I slid it into the port. The computer hummed, lines of code scrolling across the screen. Decryption key required, it said. Type it. Claire whispered. My hand shook as I entered the command I'd used months ago. The system paused, then flashed access granted. Arthur exhaled in relief. It's done. But before we could breathe, headlights flared outside the windows. Black SUVs, engine still running. Arthur's face went pale. They found us. He grabbed his laptop, smashing the router connection, but it was too late. The door exploded inward, armed men flooding in. Shouts, flashlights, chaos. Claire screamed my name, and I saw Arthur shove the computer into my hands before tackling one of the men. Run, he shouted. We bolted through a side door into the freezing night, gunfire echoing behind us. The building burned in the distance as we reached the truck, tires skidding on gravel as I floored it. When we finally stopped hours later, we were miles away. Smoke still clung to my clothes. The laptop was cracked but intact. Claire leaned her head against the window, eyes closed, whispering, "Please tell me it uploaded." I opened the lid, heart pounding, and saw a single message on the screen. Transfer incomplete. 72% uploaded. Almost there, but not enough. We'd just declared war, and now they'd know exactly who we were. We drove until the road vanished beneath fog and exhaustion. Dawn crept up slowly, the horizon a dull bruise of pink and gray. The laptop sat on Claire's knees, the cracked screen flickering every few seconds. 72%, she whispered. We were so close. I kept my eyes on the road. Every shadow behind us looked like headlights. Every curve felt like a trap. I didn't know where we were going, just that we couldn't stop moving. When the sun rose fully, we pulled into a roadside diner in the middle of nowhere. Claire looked wrecked, mud on her coat, eyes bloodshot, lips trembling with exhaustion. We ordered coffee but barely touched it. She broke the silence first. We need to finish the upload. If we stop now, everything we've done means nothing. I know, I said quietly. But we need a safe network, something they can't track. She nodded. Arthur mentioned mirrored servers. Maybe there's another one. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe he was still alive too, but deep down I knew he wasn't. That fire wasn't accidental. The way those men came in, precision, no hesitation. It was a cleanup, not an arrest. We stayed in that diner for hours, watching through the windows as the world carried on like nothing had happened. Trucks passed, families came in for breakfast, a waitress laughed at a bad joke. I wondered what it felt like to live like that again, to not look over your shoulder, to not be a ghost in your own life. Then Claire's phone buzzed. She'd bought a new burner that morning, unregistered. The number on the screen was unfamiliar. She hesitated before answering. Hello. A pause. Then a voice, raspy, familiar. It finished. Arthur. She breathed. Double quotes. Yes, I got it out. It hit 3 servers before they found me. I leaned closer, barely daring to hope. You're alive, he gave a short laugh. Not for long, but it's enough. You need to disappear for real this time. Both of you. What happens now? The truth spreads. It'll take days, maybe hours, before the files hit the surface web, but once they do, Stratos is done. He coughed hard, then added, I used your credentials, Ethan. Your name's tied to the upload. That means they'll come after you harder than ever, but it also means they can't hide. You're the face of exposure now. The line went dead. Claire and I stared at each other, the weight of it sinking in. My name. My real one. For months, I'd been running from it, burying it under fake identities, false starts, and burner phones. Now it was out in the open again, burning across every network Arthur had touched. Claire whispered, You did it. I shook my head. We did, but it's not over, she nodded slowly. Then we finish it properly. We left the diner and drove toward the coast again, toward the only place that still felt real, Seabrook, the tiny town where this all started, where I'd first tried to disappear. Maggie's cafe was still there, the same blue paint peeling off the sign, the same smell of roasted beans in the air. When we walked in, she froze mid-pour. Eli, she said, blinking. I smiled weakly. Ethan, actually. Long story. Claire gave a polite nod, staying close to the door. Maggie looked like she wanted to ask 100 questions, but sensed this wasn't the time. I asked if we could use her Wi-Fi for a few minutes. She agreed without hesitation. That's what I'd always liked about her, quiet trust. I opened the laptop, the damaged screen glowing faintly. The system still showed transfer incomplete, but the file was locked now, sealed by Arthur's relay. I tried one last command. The progress bar jumped, froze, then shifted to synths to global mirror node. 100%. Claire gasped. It worked. I sat back, staring at the words. After months of running, hiding, doubting it was done. The data, the secrets, the evidence, it was out there, untouchable. Whatever Stratos Global had buried was now public property. I didn't even want to know what the world would make of it, but peace didn't come instantly. As we left the cafe, I noticed a black sedan parked across the street. Tinted windows, engine idling. My heart sank. They found us again, I whispered. Claire's hand gripped my arm. Get in the car. We jumped into the truck and sped down the coastal road, tires kicking up gravel. The sedan followed, headlights glaring in the mirror. I pushed the pedal harder, the engine groaning in protest. Waves crashed against the cliffs to our right, the sky a low ceiling of clouds. Claire looked back. They're gaining. There's a bridge up ahead, I said. Hold on. The bridge was narrow, one lane, with a sharp curve at the end. As we hit the midpoint, I slammed the brakes and yanked the wheel. The truck skidded sideways, blocking the road. The sedan swerved to avoid us, smashing into the guardrail. Metal screamed. It teetered on the edge before plunging over into the sea below. Silence followed. Only the sound of wind and water. We sat there, breathing hard, the realization hitting us both. It was over, not just the chase, but everything that came before it. The lies, the running, the fear. Claire turned to me, tears in her eyes. You know they'll come again, right? Different names, different faces. I know, I said quietly, but not today. We drove back into town at dawn. By the time we reached Seabrook's main street, news alerts were already lighting up public screens. Headlines about massive data leak exposes global corruption network. My name was everywhere. Ethan Cole, the missing analyst who vanished last year, resurfaces as the source of leaked government archives. Claire looked at me with something between pride and disbelief. You're famous. I laughed softly. No, just visible for once. She smiled at that, a small, tired smile that made her look like the sister I'd forgotten I had. Maybe dying did make you interesting, she joked weakly. I looked at her, remembering the night she'd said those words in cruelty. But this time, there was no bitterness, just a strange, full-circle kind of irony. No, I said. Living did. We stayed in Seabrook for a few more weeks, helping Maggie around the cafe, waiting for the dust to settle. Eventually, Claire said she wanted to go home to tell our parents the truth, to face the chaos together. I didn't stop her. As for me, I stayed behind, walking the beach every morning, letting the waves erase the footprints behind me. I'd spent so long trying to disappear, and now, for the first time, I didn't need to. I existed not as someone's shadow, not as a fugitive, but as a man who'd finally owned his story. The world would argue about what I did, whether I was a hero or a criminal. But none of that mattered anymore. What mattered was that the truth was out, and so was I. When I finally packed the car again, I didn't cancel anything this time. I left my name as it was. I didn't hide, because some disappearances aren't about running away. They're about finding your way back.